My name is Nora Evans, and I was 30. My brother stole the family business and kicked us out. You are finished. I started from scratch with $600. A year later, I own a stake in his place. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. My 7-year-old son, Jake, tugged at my sleeve. Mom, why can't we eat there anymore? He asked, eyes wide, innocent, full of trust in a world that was suddenly cruel. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. Uncle Ethan says it's a business now, sweetheart. We'll find another place, I promise. But I knew the truth. It wasn't about business. My brother had stolen our family's legacy. After Dad died, Ethan had somehow manipulated the will and taken over the restaurant. He forbade family from stepping foot inside. He said, "This is a company, not a charity. You chose art over culinary school." Art culinary school. I had dreamed of blending both, creating dishes that told stories, just like Dad. And now Ethan had the nerve to reduce all that to a footnote in his empire, while we were left with nothing but memories. Jake fiddled with the zipper on his jacket, sensing my silence. Do you hate him, Mom? I crouched to his level. I don't hate anyone, baby. Sometimes people make bad choices, and that's their burden. I didn't tell him the truth, that sometimes bad choices were deliberate, greedy, and hurtful. We walked past the restaurant's front window. Ethan was inside, arms crossed, a smug smirk on his face. He didn't see us. He rarely did, but the look on his face felt like a slap. The entire place had been repainted, the old family photos removed. I recognized the corner table my father had sat at, now replaced with a vase of fake flowers. My chest tightened. Back at our tiny apartment, I sat on the couch, Jake curled up beside me, drawing superheroes in his notebook. I traced his little hand with mine and thought about how unfair the world could be. We had started with $600, barely enough to rent a small space for a food cart, but I refused to be broken. That night I called Mr. Hernandez, Dad's old supplier. I need guidance, I admitted. My voice was small, weary. You're Nora, right? I've been waiting for this call, he said, his voice steady and kind. Your father would have been proud. You have the skill, and you have the heart. Start small. Build trust, like he did. His words felt like sunlight on a frozen morning. Maybe I could rebuild. Maybe I could reclaim a piece of Dad's legacy without stepping into Ethan's shadow. The next week, we went hunting for a food cart. Jake jumped into every seat, pretending to steer like he was driving a spaceship. I laughed for the first time in months, the sound bittersweet but liberating. Finally, we found a second-hand cart, a little battered, yellow with peeling paint, but it had potential. We spent days cleaning it, repainting it, making it ours. I traced the letters carefully. Bennett's Bistro, a nod to our father. Jake helped, his small hands smearing paint on the wrong spots, laughing when I scolded him gently. Those moments were precious. They reminded me why I fought, why I refused to let Ethan's greed define us. When we were finally ready, I rolled the cart to the corner of the bustling street near our apartment. First customers were construction workers, then delivery drivers, then neighbors who had once dined at Dad's restaurant. Their recognition brought tears to my eyes. Nora, is that really you? A familiar voice called. I looked up to see Mrs. Lopez, who had managed the front counter at Dad's for decades. She smiled warmly. I knew you'd carry on the family name. This food, it tastes like home. I watched Jake beam with pride. He was learning that hard work, love, and determination could create miracles, even in the face of betrayal. But shadows always lingered. Ethan had noticed the cart. Word traveled fast in our tight-knit culinary community. One afternoon, as I served a line of hungry customers, he appeared at the corner of the street, arms crossed, frown set. The air felt heavier, the sun dimmer. This is my block, Nora, he said, voice sharp, commanding attention. People can't just steal from me and pretend it's their own. Step aside. I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. Ethan, this isn't stealing. These are our recipes, our memories. People have the right to choose where to eat. He sneered. Memories don't pay bills. You think you can compete with me? I built this. You're a shadow of what we had. Jake tugged at my apron. I knelt to him, whispering, Stay calm, baby. Mom's got this. Inside, my heart pounded like a drum. The fear, the anger, the pain. It all surged at once, but I refused to let it control me. Ethan's figure loomed, threatening, but I stayed rooted. I smiled at my customers, making small talk, taking orders, rolling past the line with practiced efficiency. Every laugh, every bite of food enjoyed was a silent defiance. I was still here. I was still creating. That night, after closing, I traced the worn edges of our cart, remembering Dad teaching me how to season a steak, the pride in his eyes, the lessons he had passed down. I promised myself, one day, Ethan would see the strength he tried to crush. One day, our family name would shine again, not through fear, but through resilience and love. And I would make sure Jake understood that, even when the world turned cruel, courage and heart could turn the tide. The mornings were the hardest. The city smelled like coffee, exhaust, and possibility all at once. Jake and I woke before sunrise, loading the cart, arranging utensils, prepping ingredients. My hands ached, my back ached, but every ache felt like a heartbeat, a pulse of life we were creating from nothing. "Mom, will people really come back?" Jake asked one chilly morning, his small hands buried in my coat pockets. I knelt down, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "They will, baby. It just takes time. And when they do, they'll taste what we've made with love." He smiled, his faith in me unwavering. Children have a way of trusting the impossible, and sometimes their belief is stronger than any grown-up despair. The first month was grueling. I spent hours perfecting recipes, testing sauces, tweaking spices, and refining everything until even the simplest sandwich felt like a masterpiece. Customers trickled in slowly, some hesitant, some curious, but word of mouth began to spread. Bennett's Bistro was no longer just a cart, it was a story. One afternoon, I served a woman who had been a regular at Dad's place. Her eyes widened, recognition dawning. "Nora, it's really you. Your father would be proud." I smiled, feeling warmth that even Ethan couldn't touch. "Thank you. That means a lot." She lingered longer than necessary, telling neighbors, friends, co-workers about the little bistro cart run by the daughter of the man who had taught a city to love good food. Slowly the line grew. Slowly our reputation took root. And then came the tipping point. It was a rainy Thursday when I noticed a man standing in the puddles, staring at the cart. At first I thought it was a customer, but his posture, arms crossed, an air of ownership, was unmistakable. Ethan. He didn't speak at first, just watched as we worked. Rain dripping from his coat, he looked like a storm incarnate. My stomach tightened. Jake hid behind my legs, peeking nervously. "Nora," Ethan said finally, voice cutting through the patter of rain. "Do you know how ridiculous this looks? A cart, on my street, trying to claim what's mine." I took a deep breath, steadying the anger that threatened to bubble over. "Ethan, it's not yours. It's ours. Dad's recipes, our family traditions. People have a right to choose where they eat. We aren't taking from you. We're creating something new." He laughed, cold and hollow. "New? Don't make me laugh. You're just a shadow trying to shine in my light, and shadows don't last." For a moment, I wanted to scream, to throw down the spatula, to let the hurt consume me. But I looked at Jake, his small hands gripping my leg, and I remembered what mattered. Survival, resilience, and proving to my son that courage outshines cruelty. "You can't stop people from loving food, Ethan," I said quietly but firmly. "And you certainly can't stop me from feeding them with heart." He sneered once more, turned on his heel, and disappeared into the rain. But even as he left, I felt something shift. Fear no longer controlled me. Determination did. That night, I stayed late with Jake, cleaning and restocking the cart for the next day. The rain had soaked through, and I shivered, but Jake was full of energy, sketching his own superhero bistro in the corner of my notebook. "Mom, one day we'll have a big restaurant, right?" he asked. I smiled, brushing paint off his fingers. "Yes, baby, one day." And that promise became my anchor. Over the next few months, Bennett's Bistro grew. I added specials, experimented with seasonal ingredients, and even hired 2 local teens to help during busy hours. Jake loved helping, carrying small trays, greeting customers, and learning the rhythm of the business. Our small victories felt monumental. One afternoon, a food critic from the local newspaper stopped by. I had noticed him lurking near the cart for days, notebook in hand, taking notes. I served him my signature steak sandwich, the one Dad had perfected over decades. The next morning, the article was published. A legacy reclaimed. Nora Evans's bistro cart brings joy back to the streets. Jake jumped up and down in excitement. We did it, Mom! People love us! I hugged him tightly, tasting tears. Yes, baby, we did it together. The recognition didn't go unnoticed by Ethan. I could feel his shadow lurking in the background, monitoring every step, waiting for us to falter. And maybe one day he would try to crush us. But for now, every customer, every smile, every satisfied bite was proof that we could thrive despite betrayal. But the fight wasn't just external. Within me, the battle raged on. Nights were long, filled with memories of Dad, of the life we had lost, of the injustice done by my own blood. Sometimes I would lie awake while Jake slept, wondering if our efforts were enough, if one day Ethan would take it all away. One evening, as the city lights reflected off rain-slick streets, Jake tugged at my sleeve. Mom, will he come back? I knelt down, looking into his eyes. He might. People who hurt others often try to come back. But no matter what, we'll face it together, you and I, and we'll always have each other. Jake nodded, satisfied with my answer, trusting me as children do. I held him close, feeling the fierce love that had become the backbone of our survival. And in that embrace, I understood something crucial. The world could try to take everything from you, even twist family into enemies, but love, courage, and resilience were weapons no one could steal. By the end of that year, Bennett's Bistro had become more than a cart. It was a symbol of triumph over betrayal, a beacon of hope for a small corner of the city. Our story of loss, theft, struggle, and rebirth was written in every satisfied customer, in every laugh shared over a hot meal, in every small victory against the shadows that tried to define us. And somewhere in the distance, I knew Ethan watched, but I was no longer afraid. Not for myself, not for Jake. We had something stronger than fear. We had each other, and that was unbreakable. Bistro's success drew attention, both welcome and unwelcome. Word traveled fast, and with it came whispers from corners I hadn't anticipated. One chilly morning, a new delivery arrived, a letter from Ethan. I opened it carefully, Jake peeking over my shoulder. The paper was crisp, formal, almost polite in appearance, but the words beneath cut sharper than any knife. Nora, stop pretending you can replace what belongs to me. You are meddling where you don't belong. Leave the street or face consequences. Jake frowned. Mom, what does he mean? I swallowed the panic threatening to rise. He wants to scare us, that's all. But fear wasn't enough to shake me. Not anymore, not after everything. I folded the letter, placing it in my pocket. We'll keep going, just like always. The next week, a series of small incidents made it clear Ethan wasn't bluffing. Someone slashed the bistro's umbrella. Another time, a bag of ingredients went missing. And once, the cart's wheels were tampered with, nearly sending it tipping over. Each time, I held Jake tightly, whispering reassurance, while anger simmered just beneath the surface. I realized then that this wasn't just about food or territory. It was personal. Every bite we served, every laugh from a customer, every small triumph was a thorn in Ethan's side. He wanted us invisible, broken, defeated. But we weren't going to be. One rainy evening, as I closed the cart, I noticed him again. Ethan, leaning against a lamppost, a shadow in the puddles. His gaze locked on me. Nora, he called, voice echoing in the empty street. We need to talk. Alone. I hesitated, Jake tugging at my coat. Mom, maybe we shouldn't... I knelt down, looking into his worried eyes. It's fine, baby. I've handled him before. You stay here. Jake's small nod was reluctant, but he trusted me. I walked toward Ethan, heart hammering, but resolve steady. Do you ever stop? I asked, standing a few feet away. Do you ever stop trying to control everything? Ethan smirked. Control. This is about legacy, Nora. Your little cart can't erase what's mine. It's not just about food, it's about respect, something you've always lacked. I took a deep breath, feeling the anger rise like a storm tide. Respect isn't demanded, Ethan. It's earned. And we're earning ours every day, with every meal. You can threaten, intimidate, even try to destroy us, but it won't work. Not now, not ever. His eyes narrowed, the mask of civility slipping. You're reckless, foolish, and you'll regret crossing me. Maybe, I admitted, but I'll never regret standing up for my son. For our family, you can't take that from me. He glared, then, with a swift turn, disappeared into the darkness, leaving me soaked by rain and trembling with adrenaline. The following week, a local food festival provided an unexpected stage. The festival was bustling, full of families, laughter, and the scent of sizzling delicacies. I set up Bennett's Bistro with care, each item plated like a story, every detail meticulously arranged. As the line of customers grew, I caught sight of a familiar figure, Ethan. He had set up a lavish stall just a few feet from mine, flashy signage, celebrity endorsements, everything a big-budget competitor could buy. His team hovered, smirking, clearly aiming to draw attention away from us. Jake grabbed my hand, whispering, "Mom, he's trying to take everyone." I nodded, feeling the surge of determination that had carried us this far. Then we'll show them why heart matters more than money. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just survival. It was a statement. Every bite we served, every smile, every satisfied customer was proof that passion and resilience outshone intimidation. As the festival unfolded, something remarkable happened. People began gravitating toward our stall, despite the spectacle next door. They wanted authenticity, warmth, love, served alongside their meals. The line for Ethan's stall dwindled. By the end of the day, Bennett's Bistro had received more praise, more attention, more loyalty than I could have hoped for. Jake danced on a small crate, clapping his hands. "We did it! We beat him!" I lifted him into my arms, tears threatening. "We did it together, baby. And this is just the beginning." But Ethan was not one to accept defeat easily. That night, I received an anonymous tip. A threat this time, more severe. Someone had vandalized the bistro's wheels, broken the umbrella, and spray-painted graffiti on the side of the cart. Go back to nothing. I stared at the words, rage and fear colliding. Jake's eyes filled with worry as he asked, "Mom, are we going to be okay?" I took a deep breath, swallowing down the fear, letting determination rise instead. "Yes, baby. We'll be okay, and he's not going to win. Not us. Not ever." The next morning, I arrived early, repaired the cart, cleaned the graffiti, and prepared for another day. Every customer I greeted, every smile I returned, felt like defiance, and by midday, the cart looked untouched, vibrant, resilient. A week later, something unexpected happened. A news crew arrived, having heard of the food festival and the David versus Goliath story of a single mother reclaiming her father's culinary legacy. They filmed interviews with me, with Jake, with our customers. The story was powerful: betrayal, theft, determination, and triumph. By the end of the broadcast, the entire city knew our story. People came from miles around to support Bennett's Bistro, and I realized Ethan's threats, his intimidation, his attempts to steal our joy had done exactly the opposite. They had fueled our fire. That night, Jake fell asleep in my arms, whispering, "Mom, we're heroes." I smiled, kissing his forehead. "Yes, baby, we are heroes. And this is only the beginning of our story." The days following the festival were a whirlwind. Bennett's Bistro had become a local sensation, a symbol of resilience and heart over greed and intimidation. But with recognition came new challenges. Ethan's harassment escalated in subtle but menacing ways. Anonymous calls in the middle of the night, suspicious figures lurking near our cart, even one morning when the tires were slashed, leaving the cart stranded in the rain. Each act was calculated, designed to instill fear and doubt. But every time, Jake's eyes, wide, trusting, and unwavering, reminded me why I couldn't falter. I repaired the cart with shaking hands, wiped the rain from my apron, and continued serving our loyal customers. Fear could knock, but it would not enter. One Thursday morning, as I arranged pastries in the display case, a call came in. "Nora Evans?" The voice was cold, deliberate. "Yes." My pulse quickened, though I kept my tone steady. "This is your final warning. Leave the city, or there will be consequences you cannot undo." I hung up without a word, slamming the phone down so hard the counter shook. Jake watched me silently from the corner, his small hands gripping the edge of the cart. "Mom, are we in danger?" I crouched to his level, locking eyes. "We've been in danger before, baby. But this is just another test. And we don't run from tests. We rise above them." His small nod gave me courage. Together, we would face whatever came. That evening, as darkness settled, I noticed shadows near the cart again. Someone was tampering with the locks. Heart racing, I grabbed a flashlight and approached slowly. "Who's there?" I demanded, voice trembling but strong. A figure stepped out. Ethan. His expression was controlled, calm, but the glint in his eyes betrayed malice. "Nora," he said smoothly, "you've pushed too far. This ends tonight." "I don't think so," I replied, placing myself between him and Jake, who had followed quietly behind. "This ends when you stop trying to hurt us." Ethan sneered. "You think this is just about the cart? It's about control. You think you can reclaim what you lost, but you've only built illusions, and illusions crumble." "Maybe," I said quietly, "but I'd rather live in illusions with my son than live in reality where fear rules my life." He stepped closer, but I refused to back down. The tension was palpable, crackling in the wet night air. I could hear Jake's breath catch behind me, the weight of his small hands gripping my jacket. Then Ethan made his move. A sudden shove aimed at the cart sent it tipping dangerously. Reflexes honed from months of struggle kicked in. I grabbed Jake and lunged toward the cart, righting it just in time. "You're insane!" I shouted, heart pounding. "And you're blind," he shot back. "Blind to the truth of your limits." In that moment, I realized reasoning with him was futile. What Ethan wanted was power, and power only respects strength. I steadied myself, locking eyes with him. "You want control? Fine. You can try to scare me, threaten me, even destroy what I've built. But you'll never touch what matters most. My son, my family, our love. You cross that line, and you'll regret it." He laughed, dark and cold, then disappeared into the shadows as suddenly as he had appeared. The threat lingered, but I felt something shift inside me. Clarity, determination, and the unmistakable conviction that we were no longer victims. The next day, I decided to confront Ethan on my own terms. I tracked him to his new location, a gleaming restaurant in the city center. The place screamed excess, sterile, and uninviting, a stark contrast to the warmth of Bennett's bistro. I walked in, head held high, carrying nothing but a folder containing documented incidents of his harassment. Employees stared as I passed, whispers following me to the front desk. "I need to speak with Mr. Ethan Bennett," I said firmly. Moments later, he appeared, surprised to see me unaccompanied. "Nora," he said, masking irritation with a smile. "Ethan," I replied, calmly placing the folder on the counter. "These are records of every act you've committed against me. Threats, vandalism, harassment, everything. I've contacted the authorities, and they're ready to take action. But I'm giving you one chance to resolve this peacefully." He studied the folder, lips tightening. "You're bluffing." "Check with the police," I said coolly. "Or better yet, think about what kind of legacy you want. One built on intimidation and fear, or one where you can finally step back and let the people you've wronged live freely." His face reddened, frustration flickering in his eyes. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that his power over me had ended. The confrontation had a ripple effect. Local news picked up the story, following up on the festival coverage. Ethan's attempts to undermine Bennett's bistro were exposed publicly, and his reputation began to crumble. Customers rallied around us, more supportive than ever. And then, one morning, a letter arrived from Ethan. No threats this time, only words that carried grudging acknowledgement. "Nora, you've beaten me, where I thought I was unbeatable. Consider this, a truce, for now." I folded it carefully, placing it in a drawer. "We did it, Jake," I said, tears welling as he hugged me tightly. "We really did it, Mom," he whispered, smiling through relief and exhaustion. I held him close, realizing that the fight had never been about the bistro alone. It had been about proving to ourselves that we were stronger than fear, that love and determination could withstand the darkest of shadows. Months later, Bennett's Bistro was thriving more than ever. Our story inspired others, showing that courage and resilience could overcome betrayal and intimidation. Jake and I laughed more freely, the nights of fear now a distant memory. And while Ethan remained a presence in the background, we were no longer bound by his control. One evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Jake sat on the crate, nibbling a cookie. "Mom, do you think he'll ever come back?" I smiled, brushing crumbs from his cheek. "Maybe. But we're ready if he does. And even if he does, we'll handle it together, just like always." He grinned, satisfied with that answer. I looked around at our bustling little cart, the customers chatting happily, the city lights reflecting in puddles from earlier rain, and I felt a profound sense of peace. We had lost much. We had fought harder, and in the end, we had claimed more than victory. We had reclaimed our lives. Bennett's Bistro stood not just as a business, but as a monument to resilience, love, and unwavering courage. And as long as we had each other, nothing could ever take that away. The months that followed Ethan's public exposure were quiet, almost peaceful, in comparison to the storm we had weathered. Bennett's Bistro had become more than a business. It was a community hub, a place where neighbors shared stories over coffee and pastries, where Jake's laughter rang out freely without the shadow of fear. The city seemed to breathe easier, knowing our little victory had happened, and I found myself smiling more, often without reason, just at the thought of how far we'd come. Jake was thriving. School had become a joy rather than a battlefield. He had friends now, kids who didn't see him as the one with the trouble at home, but as simply Jake, bright, curious, and fiercely loyal. Each day, he'd rush into the kitchen after school, chattering about his day, the stories spilling out faster than I could keep up. "Mom, you should have seen Emily today. I heard the whole story in the car," I interrupted playfully. "But go on." His grin widened, eyes sparkling. "She tripped over her shoelaces in front of everyone, and then she blamed it on me." I laughed, and for the first time in years, the sound felt natural, unforced. It reminded me of simpler days before betrayal and fear had crept into our lives. Bennett's Bistro continued to grow. With the media coverage highlighting our story, customers came from across the city, drawn by both the pastries and the story of resilience behind them. I hired a few staff to help manage the rush, people who believed not just in food, but in the spirit of community. Each employee brought their own warmth and energy, turning the bistro into a place that felt more like family than a business. I also made time for myself in ways I hadn't before. Evenings were spent journaling, reading, or walking the city streets with Jake, holding his small hand tightly as he pointed out street performers or new murals. These quiet moments grounded me, reminding me that life didn't always have to be a fight. It could also be joy. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, I stood outside the bistro, wiping down the tables, feeling the cool air brush against my face. Jake ran ahead to greet a few kids playing nearby. I watched him, feeling a swell of pride that made my chest ache. He had been through so much, yet he was thriving, smiling, fearless. And then, without warning, I felt a small hand slip into mine. "Mom, do you think we're really done with all the bad stuff?" I squeezed his hand, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "I think so, baby. But even if something comes up, we know we can face it. We've faced the worst together, remember?" He nodded, resting his head briefly against my shoulder. "Yeah, together. Together." The word carried weight I hadn't realized I'd been craving. For years, I had felt alone in a world that seemed determined to break me. But with Jake by my side, I felt unshakable. The holidays arrived, and with them came an unexpected warmth. My small apartment had been transformed into a cozy haven, lights strung along the windows, a small tree in the corner, decorations collected over the years. Jake helped me decorate, laughing when I let him hang ornaments wherever he pleased, even if the tree looked a little lopsided. I invited a few neighbors and friends from the bistro for a modest celebration. Laughter echoed through the room. Stories bounced back and forth, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about threats or revenge. I was thinking about home. At one point, Jake tugged my sleeve. "Mom, can we make cookies for everyone tomorrow?" I nodded, smiling. "Of course, baby, that's tradition now." Despite the peace we had found, I knew life could still bring challenges. But something had shifted in me. I no longer felt powerless, nor did I feel the need to prove myself to anyone except my son. I had learned that strength wasn't about aggression or retaliation. It was about resilience, love, and unwavering commitment to those who matter most. I also realized forgiveness wasn't for the person who hurt me. It was for me. I didn't need to dwell on Ethan or the pain he caused. Our story was ours to shape now, and I intended to fill it with light. One afternoon, as I closed the bistro after a busy morning, a letter arrived in the mailbox. It bore no return address, only my name. I opened it cautiously, expecting another threat. Instead, it was a simple card from an anonymous supporter. "Nora, your courage is inspiring. You've shown the world that love and determination can triumph over cruelty. Keep going. The world needs more people like you." I smiled, tears prickling my eyes. Jake ran up just in time to see me reading it. "What is it, Mom?" "Someone thinks we're doing something right," I said softly, holding the card up for him to see. He grinned. "We are doing something right." Yes, we are, I agreed, feeling a sense of completeness I hadn't known I could feel. Months turned into a year, and the bistro became a symbol of resilience and hope in the city. Jake's laughter filled the space, customers became friends, and life, in its imperfect, unpredictable way, became a rhythm of joy and stability. I often reflected on our journey, from betrayal and fear to triumph and freedom. And though scars remained, they were reminders of battles fought and won. They weren't chains, they were proof of strength. As Jake ran ahead to greet a familiar customer one busy afternoon, I paused, taking a deep breath of the warm, fragrant air. The world had been harsh, cruel even, but I had emerged whole, stronger, free. And beside me, holding my hand, was the one person who had made it all possible. My son, my anchor, my reason. Together we faced the world. Together we would continue to thrive. And finally, I knew peace.